When's the last time you felt a sense of accomplishment? What do you normally do to experience that? How about going out and having fun? Is that something you neglect doing? These two things are essential to well-being when you have a chronic illness. But hey, don't take it from me. Lupus and APS warrior and author Darren Radke takes us through this part of our well-being journey on this week's episode of Chronically Living. I'm Kelsey Harris, chronic illness warrior and psychotherapist. On Chronically Living and How to Make the Most of It, we're providing tangible ways to improve the well-being of Spoonies. So get ready to make the most out of your life, even with that pesky chronic illness.
I'm from Marshall, Wisconsin, which is just east of Madison, the capital. I'm 49 years old, and right now I'm on disability, so I'm trying to be a full-time parent, try to be as good as a husband as I can.
This is Darren, and he's had a long journey to get a diagnosis, and then of course the journey doesn't really end once the diagnosis comes. I'm sure many of you can relate. I asked him to take us through a bit of that journey.
In April of 2000, I ended up having 2 blood clots, one in my right clavicle, one in my left lung, hospitalized for a couple of days. At that point, I was diagnosed as lupus anticoagulant, which was pretty generic. And from November of 2006 to April of 2007, I suffered 3 seizures. At that point, they diagnosed me with epilepsy, even though they really didn't do any testing beyond the diagnosis. So again, I felt that was pretty generic. After switching neurologists, I was kind of fed up. I was asked to research the APS Foundation of America website, which changed my life forever. I had help by a person's name of Tina Pullman. And with her help, she helped me make a change in doctors and locations. And within 5 months, kid you not, I was diagnosed with both APS and lupus. And that was back in 2012. And throughout that time, going through a lot of natural changes with my body, and kind of led me up to writing a book about it.
I'm going to have Darren talk a bit more about his book later, but first, I decided to ask about APS. Now, I've read Darren's book, so I know what it is, but I hadn't heard of it before reading the book. So I figure some of you probably have the same question. What is APS?
That's called anti-phospholipid syndrome. For me, as a male, it affects my blood, with clots. It also has the ability to neurological issues, which that are similar to MS, which I fit that bill perfectly, unfortunately. A lot of it really, it does, affect the lungs. It also affects heart. But for women, it's a lot worse. And it's unfortunate what women with APS do go through. The diagnosis really with APS and lupus, APS was actually something I was hoping for. I know that sounds kind of weird, but at that time I was going through disability, getting signed up, getting going, and I was running into a lot of issues. And being diagnosed with APS certainly helped get me on that path. The lupus came as a surprise. I wasn't expecting that. When they looked at my labs, I was just over where I got the official diagnosis of lupus. So that itself was, like I said, stunning, but that has progressively gotten worse. And now it's to the point where doing labs is almost a waste of time. It's a no-brainer. 40% of people who do have lupus have APS, and a lot of them may not know that, and might be a head scratcher. And hopefully, that gives some people a little bit of hope of finding, maybe, they do have extra issues going on with their bodies.
I originally invited Darren on the show to talk about the 2 coping skills he uses that he talks about in his book. As sometimes happens, I found a totally different theme through the conversation. But let's start with his first coping skill, music.
I have always been a music fan, kind of being a Gen X, Generation X. I grew up on MTV, all the one-hit wonders or two-hit wonders, always grew up liking that. Eventually, I got exposed to a little in a heavier direction. To me, I liked the way the lyrics and the music sounded. It was, those are the kind of things that propelled me to loving it so much. And a lot of it that I listen to, really has attitude behind it and things that you can relate. And those are the things that I just love. And nowadays, there's really not a whole lot of bands that I'm really blown away by. And I find myself rather listening to, a lot of the older stuff. And that kind of goes hand in hand with my weightlifting in a way, because it's just a way to forget about life for a while. You could be doing, housework or stuff like that. Got the headphones on, listening to music, and you just tune everything out.
Like what Darren says about finding something in song lyrics that you can relate to. I do the same thing. Much like Darren, I love music, and it's a wonderful way to process, almost indirectly. Darren mentions that he uses his coping skills to distract, but I'm actually going to make a different argument about how he uses them based on what I actually heard during the interview. That conversation I kind of listened with my counseling ear on, though I didn't actually mention my interpretation to him during the interview. The other coping skill I wanted Darren to talk about is exercise, because he wrote a lot about it in his book. And I know that while we've talked about it on the show before, the information has always been coming from healthcare professionals. I wanted a chronic illness warrior's experience with it to be shared.
Per se. I started way back in 1990. I know I did a little before that when I was still in high school. I still did a little lifting, but nowhere near when I first started in 1990. And it didn't take long. I got hooked. And now I've been doing resistance training. I have a Bowflex in my basement, been using that well over a dozen years. What I have is probably well outdated, but it works. I just love that feeling of accomplishment. No matter how big or little it is, it just brightens up your day. It's like you're working hard towards the goal, and you reach that goal, it's like, yeah, it's great. And even though I can't push myself very hard as much as I used to, I should say, because of a heart valve issue, but to me, it's just a great way to forget about life for a while. You focus on what you're doing. That might seem like a no-brainer, but you got to have 100% focus. Otherwise, if you're looking at trying to get hurt, that's a good way of doing so. But also, exercising, it's just something to look forward to every day. If my body allows me to do it, it's awesome. I just love that feeling. If I can get my diet down pat, my body may reflect that a lot better. All the hard work that I, used to do, and now trying to maintain everything. But again, it's just something I love. You just tune everything out. And
Yeah.
for me, it's like, that's my hour. If I can get through a whole workout, like, hey, just forget about life for a while, or you could take your frustrations out. There's plenty of those, with our illnesses and dealing with, I'll just throw out there right now, and health insurance company, I'm having an issue, but it's a good way of taking that frustration out. It just feels good. It's just something, you just get hooked. And once you get hooked, it's hard to let go.
Having a sense of accomplishment. I love this, and it totally makes sense. I also feel accomplished after my workouts. Of course, exercise isn't the only way to obtain a sense of accomplishment, but because there are other evidence-based benefits of it for people with chronic pain, let's say, this added benefit is really important. I did ask Darren if it helps with any of his lupus symptoms, mainly thinking again, pain. Here's what he had to say.
That's a tough one to answer. I've always believed you need to stay flexible somehow, some way. And I feel that helps with, like doing yoga. You try to want to keep yourself flexible. Mm-hmm. And I think it does help, from the muscle standpoint. But as far as your joints and things like that, it's like, it's kind of hit or miss.
Right.
When I'm on, walking on my treadmill and even wearing, knee braces, you can feel a little knock here and there. And it's like the way your body's telling you, hey, your joints, not quite 100% today. You better, take it easy. Yeah. I mean, that go heavy or go home mentality that I used to have when I worked out in the gym definitely had to scale back throughout the years, but I have learned to isolate instead of annihilate your muscles. You don't want to tax them too heavy, but when you're working the muscles, you want to make sure, like if you're doing biceps, your biceps should be doing all the work, not, your back and throwing your back into things. You just want to isolate. So you don't have to go as heavy as.
I appreciate Darren's honesty with his answer. It seems that it helps him with certain symptoms like muscle pain, but not others like joint pain. And he mentioned that flexibility gained from yoga is important, which I agree with. Of course, this is going to be slightly different for every person. So what kind of exercise routine does Darren do, and how does he manage this routine safely?
If I have a great day, I would start off the morning, if I remember, to do yoga. I don't do anything, beyond, balancing and things along those lines. Because I do have bad knees from prior injuries playing lots of sports, as a kid and all the way, through life. But and shortly after that, I'll go on my treadmill, just do some walking. I do have long legs, so I can get up to just about 5 miles per hour. I know some people are jogging by then, but I don't jog. I never liked it. And I would never do that on the treadmill. And after I'm done with that, I hope that by the afternoon, by 1, maybe 2, depending upon how my body feels, I'll do some resistance training. If usually, depending upon which body part I'm working on, I might say it will take 45 to maybe 75 minutes. And usually that's perfect. Today happens to be one of those days where it's like I feel great. I'm going to probably squeeze in another, resistance training. Try to get some of that done today. Just my body's cooperating.
And what about on days that you don't feel as great? Like, what do you do? Any exercise then, or what do you do on those days?
I'll do absolutely nothing. I know my body's telling me, hey, you got that line in this, and it's like, you better not cross that line, or you're really going to pay for it. So it's like, you take what your body's willing to give you, and if it's not there, it's not there. So I've come to, just accept, if I can't do any exercising, which happens quite a bit, I'm fine with it. But that goes, with my overall health. I could try to plan to do things, but if my body is just not up to it, you just got to accept it. You just got to take it easy.
Yeah. I think that kind of answers my next question too, which was like, how do you establish a safe routine? But it sounds like you've said focusing on specific muscle groups, not exercising when you can't, kind of going not past what you're able to do. Is there anything else that you would add?
You know, I try to do everything possible to stay safe when I'm doing things. As I mentioned before, just walking on the treadmill, I wear knee braces since I've had my right knee scoped back in 2002. And I know my left knee isn't 100% as well. So I wear the braces. They do get very uncomfortable, but I also want to preserve them as much as possible. Being 49, you definitely need to take care of your body. But as well, if I'm doing resistance training, you know how, when you've been doing this for 30 years, you definitely know what you can do, what you should do, and what to avoid. And with using a Bowflex, you're limited to, the movements. And I've learned through experimentation, what works best, what doesn't. And I've been able to adapt my training style accordingly.
Darren really listens to his body. And there's a huge difference between listening to our bodies and listening to our minds. If you're listening right now and you don't exercise, your mind might be telling you that you can't. Whereas when Darren is exercising and his body says stop, he does. Or if he wakes up and his body says no, not today, he takes it as a not today. But then is back at it once his body says it's okay again. He and I can both appreciate that some of you might be having some fear around exercising. I mean, Darren himself has a heart condition and he still does it. So how does he deal with that fear?
I do run into it with my cardiologist. So we've kind of got to an agreement to keep myself in a 15 rep to 20 rep range, not to overtax the heart, because in the past I would get a splitting headache and never knew why until I talked to a doctor. And before, behold, I found out that I had a heart valve issue. So I need to make sure I don't overdo it. If I do, if I start getting a splitting headache, I better either get to the couch, or if it starts getting worse, and I haven't had this happen, but I better be calling 911, because I could very well possible have a heart attack, or that valve could blow. So we kind of work together with my cardiologist. We know, and also throughout the years, I know when my body is starting to work harder and my breathing is getting off, and that tells me right there, stop. And again, that comes from experience throughout the years. And I know it's something that's hard to tell somebody, that doesn't, work out, or things along those lines. You just know your body, and when it's starting to go through a change during exercise, and it's okay, let's stop. Otherwise, I'm going to have more problems on my hands.
So work with your healthcare team. Make sure you come up with a plan that is safe for your condition. When I started working out again, I actually got a personal trainer who had experience working with clients with autoimmune diseases, and he helped me tailor a program to my current abilities, wants, needs, and my conditions. He also said, don't work out during a flare, which is basically the same advice Darren gave earlier. In Darren's book, he writes about his 10 commandments of exercise. I asked him to share a few of those with us, but for all of them, you're going to have to pick up his book.
10 commandments, I kind of borrowed them from a YouTube. Used to be a power lifter and now big time weightlifter named CT Fletcher. And if you go on YouTube, he's a great motivator. A lot of swearing. So, but he had bodybuilding.com asked him about his 10 commandments. And I thought, it's like, wow, that's kind of cool. I thought if I was going to write something about, weightlifting exercise, then why don't I with my own 10 commandments, things that I live by. Well, for the most part. And I just thought, well, let's have some fun with it. And this also carries over to my overall health throughout the day. Like, like listen to your body all day long. I mean, yeah, it may seem like a no-brainer, but in a way, it's like there's always that tendency to always push yourself a little harder, and it has nothing to do with even working out. There could be things around the house that may need to get done, but your body's trying to tell you, it's like, hey, there's always tomorrow. You're not feeling great, you shouldn't do this, and then of course you end up doing it and you pay the price the following day. One of my first commandments is food is fuel. Doing dieting, which is something, again, is my biggest downfall. When you're home all the time, you tend to go to the cupboard or the refrigerator because you're actually bored and you're filling that void with food, which is terrible, but it's tough to avoid when you're home all the time. That's one thing. And even in being on the medication that I am on, they said you may gain weight. And it's like it should say you will gain weight, because medication really does a lot of odd things to the body. But otherwise, yeah, I like another commandment, make every rep count. Again, when your body has reached to a point that maybe you need to quit, or in my situation, I want to make sure that I'm doing things correctly. I'm isolating what other muscle group that I might be working that particular day. I don't like to cheat, so I really want to make that muscle work, make it count. Another one, change your routines often. That is one I actually stole from Shuki, because our bodies adapt to routines, adapt to a lot of things in life. It's amazing how our bodies do that. A great example is somebody who drinks, regular coffee and then switches to a decaf coffee. By the end of the week, they're nowhere near like themselves. They don't have any energy. Chances are they're crabby. Not saying I would ever be that way. By the end of the week, your body, got to adapt to something new, and it's like, whoa, what is this guy doing? So you got to change things up. Often you do the same thing over and over again. Your body gets used to it. I also talk about how you got to continue to stretch throughout your workouts, and that was always something. I got some weird looks back in the 90s when I worked out in the gym, because again, I always believed in flexibility, and I didn't want to get hurt. And I only got injured once throughout all those years. And from that standpoint, I'm glad that, I don't care about the scaring that went on. It's like I didn't get hurt. Otherwise, you got to find what motivates you. And then, you got to have fun at what you're doing. Again, you don't want to be just exercising by going through the movements. Just kind of say, oh, I'm just working out just to say, hey, I worked out. And it's like, well, that's fun, To me, that's always been something I've always enjoyed. Again, that feeling of accomplishment is worth it. It's always something you look forward to in your job, making sure you accomplish your goals there, even at home, to accomplish your goals at being a parent, being a husband. You just want to make sure you're doing everything that you should be doing or could be doing. How about that?
And that brings us full circle back to that sense of accomplishment. Yes, definitely helps if you're having fun doing what you're doing. So sometimes that does require a bit of creativity, especially if you're not someone who enjoys exercising, for example. Though that sense of accomplishment may help you eventually enjoy it anyway. And here Darren says that sense of accomplishment and the positive feelings that come with it can be obtained by many other things throughout the day, like getting some tasks done or spending time with your family. And a sense of accomplishment is extremely beneficial for well-being. In his book, Darren writes, "Live for today, seize the day." What does that phrase mean to him?
You never know what tomorrow may bring. And I know that's a cliche, but honestly, I was just in a situation where I was in the hospital in early August, and I got some lung issues that, I'm going to be going through, the testing process, and who knows what that may bring. Would I have to make some changes in my life? And that's where, in today's a great example. I feel great. I enjoy this day. Everything, when I talk about seize the day, that's where, exercising was one part of it. Just trying to get, a few things done around the house is another part of it. I just feel great. So today it's like I'm trying to do as much as I can to make sure I'm not overdoing things, because I don't want to put off what I could today to tomorrow, because God only knows what tomorrow may bring. And I kind of stole that from Dead Poets Society, that movie. But when you got chronic illnesses, or you never know what tomorrow may bring. And even things can happen in the same day. Mm-hmm. If you push things off until I'll do this stuff this afternoon. And this afternoon comes and you feel like you got hit by a semi and dragged, a couple blocks down the road. So you just, if the opportunity presents itself, live life, do something. Don't be stuck like me, where you're stuck at home. It's like, God, enjoy yourself. Don't be afraid to have fun. And I also feel like, with our illnesses, we hold ourselves back, and it's like, you got to question. And it's like, are we holding ourselves back? Like we're afraid to have fun, because we don't know what if, and I often wonder that to myself. It's like, am I afraid to have fun? Have I forgot what that is?
Right, yeah.
I feel great today. Let's go do something, with the family. And part of me feels like, oh boy, I don't know if I should or shouldn't. And it's like, God, it's like, I wonder, it's like, am I just afraid to have fun? You can get out of the house for a while. It's like, it's terrible. It's a terrible feeling. And it's a head scratcher. It's like, why do I want to be cooped up in the house when I'm that way on, every day?
I abandoned the fear of the what ifs around going out and having fun a long time ago. But I appreciate that for many people, they're stuck there. I'm glad Darren brought this up, but also how important for our well-being it is to go out and have some fun. Okay, so let's talk about Darren's book for a bit.
My book chronicles the 21-year journey, how things first started. And I kind of go through, just how simple that I wake up one morning and my right arm has swelling. And 5 days later, I'm in a hospital bed with clots. And I wanted to start there and go through almost as a timeline how things changed within my life. not necessarily my health, but also my personal life and how everything, you worked around that and how things kind of derailed your life, your accomplishments. I talk about a lot of the pros and cons with, my doctors and facilities that I went to. I've had a few issues with doctors, big surprise, but also talking about disability. The disability process is not a walk in the park. It took me 3 years, lots of paperwork. It is not an enjoyable process. And to tell people, even you're on disability, you get that funny feeling, does this person believe me? I talk about a lot of my everyday life, how it affects my family, because it definitely puts more pressure on my wife. I've been told, before that it's like, boy, you must be really strong to be able to talk about your story. It's like, no, you should talk to my wife. She's a lot stronger than I ever will be. But also, towards the end of the book, trying to understand what my limitations are. You kind of learn them the hard way, unfortunately. Like an example would be, being out in the sun too long for like 2 hours. So use that as an example. You come to find out that it's like, you better keep your exposure to an hour and a half. That way you don't feel the after effects because of, with lupus. And with all that, you can create your own boundaries. Again, that line in the sand. I know I use that line way too much, but it's kind of just the way it is, because it's like, don't cross that line. And that's your boundary. Yeah. It's not a fun thing to have those boundaries, but they're there to keep you safe. It took me 3 years to write it because I'm not a type of person that can just sit down and do everything at once. My brain just doesn't function that way. And there for a while, I had Post-it notes all over my computer, notebooks with little notes here and there. I mean, it was a disorganized mess, but that's the way how I function. The thoughts come and go, and then when the thoughts come, you better write it down.
So let's do our lightning round questions.
All right.
So what are the top 5 songs that describe your life? I'm excited because you're a music lover.
I actually had a tough time narrowing it down to 5.
Not surprised.
Yeah, here we go. The first one is from the band Suicidal Tendencies. And I would tell people don't get lost up in that name, but the song is called Feel Like, and I won't swear, but crap, Deja Vu, that's the name of the song. The next song is Through and Through by a band called Life of Agony. Again, I would say don't get lost up in the title of the band because it is a very serious song through and through. My next one is called Judas by the band Fozzy. The lead singer actually is Chris Jericho, a famous wrestler. Excellent song. Next one, Something's Off by Hatebreed. That's kind of a brutal song. And Pain Redefined by Disturbed. I know Disturbed is very well known throughout the industry. It's not a song most people have heard, but it's a great song. And I think you could call what we go through, the pain, you're redefining things. So I always thought that's an excellent song. So that's the 5 I narrowed it down to. I think I had about 20.
Well, I'm very impressed that you were able to narrow it down.
Yes, but these are the 5 that if I really need to pick me up, that kind of let loose of, of what you're going through, what describes you. It's like, okay, these are definitely the ones.
Yeah. What's one thing you can't go a day without doing?
Can it be a tie?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, my family is number one, but if there's a 1.5, it would have to be football. Here in Wisconsin, Green Bay Packers. It's a way of life around here. And when they play, you plan your whole day around them. And I know I'm not the only one. That's how serious we take things here. So definitely football has got to be on that list.
Awesome. What's one thing you plan on doing in your life that you haven't yet?
Take a vacation with my wife. We haven't, of course, with having children, the only vacation we took ourselves was our honeymoon. When we went down to Sandals in the Bahamas, which was just perfect after all the stress you go through, for a wedding. But the only vacation we've been able to take with the children was, and thankfully, Walt Disney World, because throughout the last 3 years, we've had things planned, but we've had to cancel them because of all the changes my wife was going through as a physical therapist assistant. We all know the health industry has its ups and downs, and she definitely was going through a lot of the downs. So we've had some plans that we had to cancel. So right now it'd be nice to take a vacation, just the two of us. And we do have one planned for our 25th and wedding anniversary. But being that's 3 years from now, a lot could happen. But we would like to go back to Sandals in the Bahamas and renew our vows. We thought that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that's great. I hope that happens for you.
Yes, I do too.
Describe your perfect day.
To do whatever I want to do, where you have absolutely no boundaries, you're pain free, you don't have to worry about any issues the following day. To me, that's the perfect day. To be able to just let loose, do whatever you want to do, whatever it may be, who cares, that would be perfect, or be able to mix in with family time as well. I don't have to worry about what tomorrow may bring. I'm going to feel fine, To me, that would mean everything to me to describe a perfect day. Just be pain-free and know that there's going to be no consequences the following day.
Yeah, that does sound perfect. And how do you inspire others to make the most of their lives?
Well, I hope the first one is my book. I hope I can get people to, read it. Hopefully that would inspire others to be able to open up, maybe have a little more of an understanding what the body is doing. Another one is my actions, how I carry myself, how I go about the day. I try not to be somebody who's afraid to do maybe a little more than you have to, help out, people where I can. Let those actions carry over. And it might sound kind of cheesy, but I'm going to say it anyway, to inspire people is to talk on podcasts such as this one, to be able to kind of, again, hopefully my story inspires others and that people won't be afraid to talk about what they have. Yeah, it stinks what everybody's going through. Everybody's different, but whatever we can do to pick somebody else up, to help them out, one at a time, that's perfect.
Amazing. Where do you have social media that we could follow you on, or a website we could find?
My website is www.deceivedfromwithin.com. From there, you can contact me directly. You can read my blog. I try doing that once a week. I did have a little hiccup with dealing with a health insurance issue. But you also can find a location where you can order merchandise, APS and Lupus Warrior. merchandise. It was something that I created where it combines on the ribbon both burgundy and purple, which are the separate colors for APS and lupus. Quite proud of that. And you can go to that website and as well as order my book.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been a fantastic guest.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your podcast and to be able to talk to everybody.
The theme of this episode really became about how having a sense of accomplishment can improve our well-being as chronic illness warriors. Even for Darren just to have written a book about himself, in addition to that likely being therapeutic, it's obvious that he has a sense of accomplishment with that as well. Earlier, I mentioned that I don't think Darren's use of music and exercise are a distraction like he mentioned they were. Instead, it really seems to align with values-based living. Health, exercise, music, these things are important to him. So he participates in activities that are based on his values and give him some sense of relief, accomplishment, and enjoyment. Okay, it's time to reflect. What did you notice about your thoughts and feelings while you were listening to Darren speak today? And what do you notice about your noticing either in that moment or now as we reflect back on it? Don't forget to buy Darren's book if you're interested in hearing more from him. And please rate and review the show wherever you get it and let other people know in our amazing community about this show. Thanks everyone for listening this week and keep making the most of it. Special thanks to Nicole Skira for the original music and to Charity Williams for the original artwork.